Before we begin, if this resonates, please like, subscribe, and share. It helps us grow the conversation and meet this epochal moment together, where something new is arising in humanity. Welcome to Portals of Perception and to the Universalis project episode 25. I'm here with Heney and Kyriaki Nikandrou. Welcome.
Hello, Aviv. Hello, Karen. Always great to be with you.
Welcome, Aviv and Kyriaki and everyone who's watching.
Indeed. Well, so I'm coming to you today live from Helsinki. I landed here less than 24 hours ago, just 24 hours ago. And I asked that we connect inside our ongoing adventure and experimentation with new scenarios and new possibilities and new states and insights and connective configurations that are showing up. And so part of today is I travel from Seattle to Helsinki, 10 time zones. And typically it takes a couple of days to get adjusted, but there is, I sense, a unique opportunity in today. And let me try and explain why, then make a concrete framing and proposal for the first segment we are attempting to record today, and then plunge into it. So I haven't written yet in the portals into the soul work, but I think in some chapter in the future we will probably write and talk about this idea that the soul has two parts, two natures. One is electric in nature and faster, and one is more magnetic in nature and slower. And I've known for years that when you travel, especially when you cross an ocean, so through many time zones, the electric part of you arrives with you, but the magnetic travels through over several days until it fully joins you. However, even that is a little too simplistic, because actually not only is there an electric and magnetic natures in the soul, they each have a higher and a lower nature, or higher and lower configuration. So the electric is the faster life, and the higher aspect of the electric, for example, will show up with new connections, new revelations, new contact points you're making with new possibilities. And the initiative life will show up through that. The lower electric is when you get distracted and disjointed. And a lot of that can happen, by the way, when you travel, if logistically something that you didn't want to happen happens, which often happens when you travel. But my travel was relaxed and uneventful as can be. And just to frame what's the magnetic nature, the magnetic is, well, the lower magnetic is the everything about the ongoing patterns of your life in the place you live, and all the administrative and management aspect of your life. But the higher magnetic nature is to do with your quest, your devotional inquiry, what I often describe as the permanent line inquiry. So this is me giving context to then say that I have discovered that when I come to a new place, and I have oriented in advance the magnetic life, the devotional, petitional, permanent line inquiry part of me, I found out that when I travel and I get to a place and I've oriented my devotional soul to the place and what is it that I'm interested in, and in this case, what I'm interested in is to be available to make contact with anything higher in the district, in the Nordic lands. Then what happens when I arrive, when the electric part of me arrives, it makes a signal, and there is a window in which something can find me. So this morning, I think I only slept for maybe 4 or 5 hours, and I was awakened at 5 a.m. and I knew there was a presence in the room. And sometime I will get up to try to write inside an environment like this, but it wanted me not to write. It wanted me to stay lying down in a meditative, abiding mode, which is what I've done. So I stayed with it, and it got stronger and stronger and stronger, and it was loading at the back of the head. And all that was occurring when I already knew that I wanted episode 25 to be framed. I'm looking at the slide on my other computer under the title, or with the title of Where Are We and What Brought Us Here? A Socrates moment. So it was loading and building into this. And what I initially thought was that I will try to narrate a certain appraisal with this idea of a Socrates moment. So that's what I'm proposing to do, with the awareness that it didn't want me to do this with slides. So I often build slides, and part of the reason as to why I do the slides is because there is a loom process that is underway with dozen threads, and I want to capture the threads so that we will be able to, within a reasonable short time, even though they are often long, actually access those threads. And often there is an awareness of needing to be exact with language, or as exact as can be. At this time, it didn't want me to do this process. So I don't actually know precisely what of this cascading flow that was appearing all day today. I don't exactly know what of it will come through, but I'm thinking if we get 60 or 70% of it, it should be good enough. And yeah, so I'd say that as an opening, just to get us grounded. How is that just as a location for what we are about to embark on?
Very exciting. And looking forward to whatever cadence wants to make itself known at this time.
Great. Well, the other thing, the brief, the coaching, not that we pay attention too much to this coaching, but it still is a point that when we record that we should speak through the camera to try to reach whoever is with us. And I don't know how successful or how effective we are in doing this, but the sense today is actually to reverse this. I want to not project and talk through. I want to actually stay in here and be almost in a close-in conversation and invite whoever is with us to step through the camera and join us here on this side of the camera rather than me or us looking to project, because part of the way this process emerged was almost as though I would close my eyes and I would talk to myself, which would appear very strange on YouTube, of course. I'm not going to do it here, but the way of this is, and I will explain in a minute why that is so, is a process as such. So I'm about to demonstrate a certain way of being with something, or at least I'm going to attempt to demonstrate it. And part of it is me not rushing, and part of it is me talking as though you're here around this little table, and we're just chatting away. And there may be pauses or not. And in the WhatsApp message that I sent you just a couple of hours ago, what I think I said was something like, what is appearing has the nature of it wants us speaking as a way of listening, so that we can listen and hear, so that it can listen and hear to how we are in conversation with each other and with ourselves about this. That was the nature of it. So, yeah, Karen, how is this landing with you as a starter location?
I was thinking about how we talk about being invitational, and when you're invitational and something, somebody, some unseen presence comes to visit, then there's an engagement. We don't put our thing upon it, or it doesn't put its thing upon us. It's a hosting situation, and the sensitivity that you've described in how to approach this echoes with that response to an invitation, and it feels very warming. And one other thought is, you spoke about a presence and your awareness of presence in the room, and that is something that I wanted to share from the standpoint of, in a way, engaging with everyone who's listening to this, that it is something very specific. Sometimes at night time or in the woods or something, that awareness of something with an intelligence that's wanting to communicate or commune, and everybody in their different ways will work out how to respond. It might be by writing or drawing or a movement or a conversation, but it's very special, and it's part of being human.
Indeed. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, thank you both for that. So the idea of calling this approach and this experimental journey today a Socrates moment or a Socratic moment comes out of this frame that is associated with Socrates, which is when he said that the unexamined life is not worth living. And when you think about that, as we often in various portals conversations, in current openings and also in several Universalis conversations, we would often reach for the frame that enables us to think through the exoteric, mesoteric, and esoteric. So, well, could assume that anybody heard this idea that the unexamined life is not worth living, and in most situations it will be taken up as an exoteric, at an exoteric level as well. What it really means is living with self-awareness, meaning not living as an automaton or as a robotic human just going through the motions, but truly being a person that lives with awareness about what you do and where you are. But if you take it then a step deeper and inquire, well, what could the meaning of an examined life be rather than unexamined, the examined life be at a mesoteric level, it will invite the suggestion of examining our reasons, examining our motives, examining our actions, examining why we do what we do, and yeah, examining our conscience, so that as we walk through life, we are carrying that lens that is reflective and where we debrief our experiences and we learn from our experiences. And that's a both novel and noble way to live. But there is a third way of considering the idea of living an examined life, which I want to try to describe. And then I want to try to demonstrate and offer access to. And when I do that, my invitation, first of all, to the two of you and to anybody joining us, to not try to, on the spot, do what I do with you. You can, obviously, it's natural, when you're presented with something, to try to immediately access it in yourself. But as I will explain in a minute, this is something I've been with for many, many years. And I don't think I've ever spoken about it in the way I'm about to attempt to speak about. So the intent in this is to offer access to something. But the wisdom of engaging with this is not to compare yourself and try to, on the spot, produce something that is in the same vein, but rather be with the experiment and not try to project oneself into it, but rather be in the presence of it, in the friendly presence with it as a friend, as a journey companion, and see how it settles with you in the hours and the days to follow. Okay, now I'll explain what I mean by this third way and the esoteric appreciation of living or seeking to live an examined life. And it comes with the awareness that Socrates was obviously not just an initiated human who went through God knows whatever mystery schools and created his own mystery school. And most probably was able to access states and processes that are unique and profound and rare, which presents one of the major problems with processing the codified knowledge about Socrates, mostly through Plato, and offers some new contemplative wonderings about why was it that Socrates didn't write himself, because he was more in the state that produced those experiences. So what was the state that he was in, and what was it that he was seeking to access and mediate, and what was it that he was irradiating his mystery school and students with? I don't know that I know that I have the answers to these things, but these are contemplations to uphold, and the third approach, the third more esoteric pathway into the idea of examining one's life comes from the appreciation that anything that we have experienced, anything that we have done in our life, actually has created an energetic blueprint that is etched in the human system in several places. Is etched in our blood system in one way, is etched in our brain in another way, and is etched in the energetic field and in the auric sheath, which is the outer layer of the aura, in the place where the record of our experiences are etched. So that is a technical side, if you like, and not necessarily the most important element. But the suggestion is that the invitation he is making to live the examined life rather than the unexamined life has a subtle proposal, which is that one may be able to enter a state where the individualized experience of that energetic blueprint becomes available to you more as an object rather than a subject. So you have gone through the experiences of your life, but now that you have gone through these experiences, they live as an energetic form, and a bit like the way we described in several Universalis conversations when we walked through the different stories of the epoch, and especially made the distinction between story one, which talked about his story, the historic story, and then made a distinction that her story was not a feministic way of looking at history, but rather was a way of processing through world events in terms of metabolizing the energetic impact of those events and the record they have left. So in the same way as we made this proposal in relation to historic events that provided us access to trace the sevenfold fractal of the epoch, one may also seek to access with a similar examination and inquiry the energetic record of one's experiences. At which point, what occurs is, rather than you tracing the events of your life in a chronological way, you have an access for specific moments in your life, potentially to every moment in your life, where those moments present themselves before you, and you're able to look at them as an object rather than a subject, and examine them, and examine the catalyzing motivations that propel them, or propelled you through those events, but you're looking at those as though you are seeing yourself at these successive moments of your lives in the present term, because they are vibrantly alive in the here and now. So I say all that again as background, because the background that brought this was that over the last week before I flew out here to Helsinki, I wrote to you that I felt it was time for us to try to appraise where we are in the journey, in the Universalis journey. And then it occurred to me that that would be the thing to do with the Socrates kind of mindset of examining where we are, but then I recognize that you cannot really examine where you are just by looking at the environment physically, or for us in terms of the journey of the Universalis journey and what it brought us to. It really requires more to look at in terms of what brought us here. And then I realized that the inquiry of what brought us here also could be approached at the exoteric, mesoteric, and the esoteric level. So the question I presented myself with was what brought us here. And the practical way to configure this question, this is Helsinki, so it was sunny, bright until a few minutes ago, and now it's cloudy again. And so the light conditions are changing on the camera, which is all right. And the simple way to convert the question of what brought us here in a practical sense is to ask, what were you doing, Aviv, before you embarked together with the two of you, Karen and Kyriaki, about the into the Universalis journey. What were you doing before? And the simple answer is that, well, just before we launched the Universalis project and before asking you, would you be kind to accompany me on this journey, because I had no idea where it was going and how it was going to fashion itself. What I was doing before, what we were doing before, was we were in the early days of the first couple of years of the Portals project, Portals endeavor. But then in the bigger context, what led to the Portals project in the 7 or so years run up to it was a threefold study endeavor. The first aspect of which was the study of the human predicament and its multiple stop situation scenarios. And I actually attempted to write a book about this, but I knew earlier on that it was never going to become a book as such. It was more a way to approach this not in an intellectual, not in a conceptual way, but to actually confront those stop situations. So that was one. And that's what I'm about to propose to do a deep dive after I complete the first experiment of the trace, if we feel that we can. What that was supported by and accompanied by was the study endeavor of the culmination of the epoch. And the two, each was emerging, if you like, on its own with a lot of cross-pollination and cross-fertilization. The third study endeavor was the study of integration. And why that became an important object to consider was because on the run-up, those 7 years before we started Portals, and so 9 years before we started Universalis, because we started Universalis some year and a half or 2 years in, was that I felt that I've accomplished in my evaluation important success thresholds in several frontiers that I was focusing on, and at the same time I felt that my life was not gathered to a purpose, which is a very strange statement from somebody who consciously and concretely from his mid-20s worked on the purpose journey and for 4 decades guided others in the purpose journey. So, but what I mean by that is that with all that I've been able to accomplish in various spaces, they were not integrated. The examined life told me that my life was not integrated yet. So that's the simple answer to what I was doing before Portals, and in several ways Portals and then the Universalis project was an answer to these 3 lines of endeavor: the study of the human stop situation and its predicaments, the epoch and its culmination process, and the need to find a way, or rather the need to allow something else to pick me up. Yeah, and facilitate an integration higher than I was capable of accessing myself. So it needed to be guided and inspired by something other than my intention, which is the journey we've been on. So now it is at this point in my internal appraisal that I recognized that I needed to actually journey even further back in time to try to access this third way of examining one's life, where one looks at, it's almost as though one looks at the energetic tableau, the template of one's energetic formation. Because to be able to put those three lines of endeavor in context, I have to, like, I said, those were the answer to the question, what were you doing before Portals was launched and before we launched the Universalis project, but how did I get to be in this place? What were the formative and shaping events and processes that catalyze that, which is what I'm about to try to do, to embark on that experiment. Let me just pause here and I give you a chance to just are you with me so far? Is there any clarification that's needed on that? And then I'll dive into how I'm proposing to try to experiment. We'll really experiment describing briefly, because it can take many hours, but a series, cascading, a series of pictures of a younger me, but not by way of romanticizing or going down memory lane, but rather bringing up this capacity of seeing the configuration as an object rather than being immersed in the subjective experience. Let me just pause here and give you a chance to bring your voice into this for a minute.
I think when you just said about the object, that's kind of crystallizes it in a way of the access into these layers and images and overlays. So I'm following it from that context. So I think that's an important element. There's not really anything else to say at this point other than going with the storyline and slightly adjacently thinking where I can maybe bring in parallels so that it brings my life along with the journey.
Yeah, which I advised you to do gently. It's completely natural to do that. But my advice was bring yourself and your life, because we are each living a whole person's life. Do so free from the need to be in any comparison. Sometime it will, something like this will link us to a comparative part of our brain. We don't want to do this with a comparative part of the brain. We want to do this with a symphonic, witnessing presence of the soul. And there is a difference.
Yes, I appreciate that. That's valid. Yeah.
To add to what Karen said, that this sounds as a very potent and special process of also a kind of harvesting of one's life. There's like and it's a question mark for me. So I'm really looking what did Socrates means to examine the unexamined life. It's not worth living. And I find these elements of slowing down, examining what happened before, during, and after something. What were the energetic currents and the motives driving each phase of your life? And what does it says? So where does that leave you now? And what does it suggest for you to do? So I'm looking forward, and it's very good to hear about the 3 things that you were doing before the Universalis journey that we embarked on.
And it was in that context and in the context of the Epoch journey that 3 of us got to meet each other. We provided us an opportunity to get to know each other. Well, so launching into this experiment, I'm about to try to describe, and sometimes I will toggle between talking in the first person language, talking about myself in the third person, and because that will provide access of examining the experience as an object. And the thing to listen to and observe, again, is not necessarily the specific personal details, although they're certainly relevant in the context of the inquiry that we are exploring of where the unfolding of the Universalis project is concerned, but more to in terms of if you want to engage in this exploration and find access, more to try to catch the way of it. Okay, so I go first to the last year of high school, and I am 16 and a half. The year is 1976, and in the preceding years, actually earlier on, I was engaged in the pursuit of long distance running. I became the Israeli champion for cross-country long distance running. The object of which was pushing myself to the edge, pushing myself to the limit, and trying to access a threshold beyond pain. And before I knew it, it was probably an unconscious desire, an unconscious need to make some contact with whatever there is beyond the normal range of experience that was available. And so I now come to the last year of high school, and it was a special kind of school in that born and raised in a kibbutz in an idealistic time. It was a very free, relatively free, is probably better described than very free, relatively free kind of scenario. But I pushed the limits of that definition. And I negotiated, which was by way of saying I requested and got permission from the school principal to spend the last year of school, not in the classroom, but to spend the last year of school essentially customizing and tailoring my own study and surround my life with everything I could find in the library. So I essentially spend most of the year in library, surrounded myself with everything I could find in the philosophy section and sociology and psychology and so on and so forth. Eastern and Western and so on. And the image that I see is I see this young person is just into his 16 years and he's sitting at a desk with all these books and he's opening the books and reading a part here and reading a part there. And he's having great troubles trying to make sense of anything he reads. And the reason he's having great troubles is because there are actually three problems that he's running into. First, it's very difficult for him to understand whatever any of those renowned philosophers is talking about, probably partly because he has not yet developed his frame of reference. And his mind is not as evolved conceptually. So that's part of it. But there are two or three other problems that are probably more pronounced. So by that time, he had experienced three unique realms of experience. One was in running, especially running in the outdoor, getting through the pain threshold and experiencing something subtle and profound beyond that he was able to access in himself. Second, he was also with it experiencing the subtle energies that were available in the outdoor, in nature. And it didn't have language for those things. It doesn't have language for those things. So I want to try and talk about it in the present perfect term so that provides that access. But there is powerful feelings and experiences that he is gaining access to, for which he doesn't have language. And anything he's reading in these books, nothing talks about it. So, and he also found a third realm, a third theater where he started to experience powerful feelings and intuitions, which was in guiding group conversations in the youth movement. And this is described, the advent of how that opened up is described in one of the chapters of the Portals into the Soul work. So he's having these unique, powerful, subtle experiences of subtle energies in conversations with other people, with himself running and being in the outdoors. And now he is in the pursuit of meaning and reading all these philosophers. And two things that are happening. First, he struggles to understand what is written in these books. And secondly, it doesn't provide him access and language to what he is experiencing as the most vivid, vibrant actuality of his experiences through the recent years of his youthful explorations. The third problem is a lot of those concepts, they come across sophisticated, and he is not able to find direct access through those books to something else. He is experiencing most of what's offered in the literature is concepts, cosmologies of concepts that he somehow needs to shove into his brain to try to look at the world with, rather than those those frameworks of knowledge providing access to something bigger, universal. So these are the three problems that he is running into when he's sitting in the library trying to write his high school dissertation, because the agreement with the principal was, okay, you'll sit in the library, but you're going to write something as a dissertation. We can truly offer you the verification, the diploma that you finished high school. And so I produced this high school dissertation, and the school principal took it to. She didn't know what to do with it, so she took it to the head of the philosophy department in one of the universities in Israel, and he read it, and he said he needs to meet with me before he will be able to offer his evaluation of the work. So we're having this meeting, and he's very complimentary, and he asks me about my journey and what I experienced and so on, and he's looking, I'm back to the third voice, so he's looking at him with these eyes that he would come to, this young man would come to experience again and again with several people. And for many, many years, he did not understand what these eyes, what this look meant. It would take him 10 years, 15 years, into his early 30s, when he would look back and he would understand what these eyes meant, what this look meant. Translated into language, this look meant somebody who looks at this young man and with a dual perspective, they see something that they experienced themselves in that age that they largely feel has been crushed out of them by the world. And they're looking with a wonder, a bit with fatherly and teacherly protectiveness, but also with a wonder, well, will he be able to retain it, or will the world crush this passionate fascination of his? Essentially, he said to this young man, I'm going to grade and evaluate your work at the highest level, not because you have fashioned or written anything groundbreaking intellectually or theory-wise, but because what I experience with you is an awakening of an unwavering quest, a genuine, unwavering inquiry that is at the core of any true, real philosophical search, which was honest and a gift for that young man to receive that feedback. And partly was also him acknowledging the way this dissertation, this writing starts. It starts with essentially taking a vow not to forget to remember what the experience of being in that pursuit was like. There's one more moment to add to this, which is about 3 or 4 months in the middle of that last year of high school. The year it's early 76. Suddenly, this young man got a very high fever for 3 weeks, when nothing was wrong with him. There was nothing that the doctor could tell was wrong. Just experienced high fever for 3 weeks. And it was in that time that something internally changed. And I'm back to the first person voice. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't place much with it. Again, until maybe 15 years later, when I was able to trace in a similar trace to the one I'm doing now, and recognized that there was the experience of the fever sometime would happen when the soul seeks to assimilate a tremendous charge and needs to go through an alchemical transformation that will facilitate a rewiring, a reconfiguration on the inside. And so it would take me 15 years to add up that 1976 was a year where an important influx of potencies that were coming into the planet that was part of that came into an appreciation as part of a study of the unfolding story of the epoch and the events that took place round about that time. So that ended high school, and what this picture leaves the witnessing surveillance today with is it leaves with a sense of profound propulsion and desire to know, to make contact, and to understand what life is about and what was it that this young person was experiencing. And at the same time, with it mostly a sense of confusion and not finding in the library and in the written access that at least was available back then, anything that would explain the experiences that he was having. So now we skip 4.5 years. He has been trained as a fighter pilot in the Israeli Air Force. He is practicing during the day war games in his wing unit, and in the evenings he's doing his continual research and study explorations. He's practicing some yoga, he's trying a variety of meditational techniques, and is desperately searching to reconcile a certain interior sense that has not been answered yet, has not been met. And then at some point he stumbles on a path in which a central offering is the study of the ways of the universe, the study of what in a recent Universalis conversation we described as the natural laws. This is when we frame the fivefold validation system of life. And element one was the study of the natural laws. So that tells you where this journey began 40 years earlier, more than 40 years now, and 44 years now, maybe more. Yeah, 44, 45 years. So He is at the time 21 years of age, and essentially what he assimilates, what he integrates is the perspective and the clue, the key, the message that if you study the core principles that govern all processes in life, all processes in the universe, if you study those not just as concepts, but if you immerse yourself and imbue your life with almost all the time in whatever you do, just please not when you're flying these jets because you're trying to stay alive, but in every other thing you do, if you embody to the best of your ability, you can make yourself an instrument, a vehicle for these processes. And in several ways, that's the journey he's on from 21 to 42 for another 21 years of his life. Working with groups. But whatever work you're doing with groups in the personal growth, personal development space, he is primarily, firstly engaged with that pursuit, that endeavor in himself. And successively is getting more and more results in the endeavor of that embodiment journey, all while the living in the world experience is as bewildering as ever, because the raising a family, paying the bills, seem to be a very difficult bridging story to those actualities that are proposed by studying the ways of the universe, what we are calling now creational logic. And he made a promise to his wife when he was 25 that the material question will be answered out of the purpose journey of his life. And that's the juncture that he arrives at age 42. So there is that witnessing eye that looks at the energetic template, the energetic tableau of the life, sees moments where that core endeavor becomes more and more embodied. And at the same time, he's still not able to reach touching the ground with this. It's embodied here, but not a fully embodied with all aspects of his life. So then at the age of 42, he recognizes that he now needs to answer the material question. And he decides he will do this not as just something that he must resolve and answer, but also as a way to create a personal crucible in which those 21 years of conscious endeavor to be in the pursuit of understanding the ways of the universe will actually be tested to be proven right in all aspects, including in these realms, and B, actually use the struggle, use the pain to accelerate that embodiment. And that's the journey that occurs from age 42 to maybe 53, 54, 56. Early 2000s to 2012, 13, 14. So one of the unique things that this way of witnessing affords now is sensing and measuring the kind of pain, the kind of ache that appears in these successive images. And it changes through the years. But there is, in each and every step, there is a particular kind of ache, particular kind of pain. And in the first 21 years, from 21, well, from 16 to 21, from 21 to 42, there is a journey that is at the time described as or later described as a journey away from the world. And the journey embarked on at age 42 is the journey back into the world, and the journey to run into the pain point. Wherever there is pain, he now wants to get into the pain. Right? If he's experiencing pain, the pain of embarrassment, the pain of not being able to do something, the pain of being frightened by embarking on something he hasn't done before, the pain of needing to live with the unknown and the unresolved conundrum as yet about his inquiry at that point in time, which said, is it possible? Can I do it? Will I be able to do it? Will I be able to enter the halls, the corporate halls of power, to make fast money, to do 30, 40 years of financial development in 10, 12 years, and stay true to the integrity of this deeper spiritual and developmental calling? Can it be done? And he decides to actually turn the question on its head, and rather than prove that it can be done, he is doubling down on it and saying, no, not only are you going to have to prove that it's being done, you're going to prove that by doing this, you actually accelerate the journey, that becomes more than just a feature of it, it becomes the thing itself. That is what leads, that's the background to deciding around 2013, 2014 to pick up the three-prong study endeavor that was described as the study of the human predicament and its stop situations, which was in many ways cascading throughout the decades before, but now was approached in a more head-on, formal way. The study of the unfolding, culminating epoch, and then actually along this journey, the realization that even now, that with the various successes in these different fields, because at that point, there was visible success in working with groups, and there was visible success in working with leadership teams and parachuting with senior teams in Silicon Valley and other international companies. But life, the living experience, felt fragmented, or at least not gathered to an integrated purpose. And actually, that becomes a burning urgency and very desperate burning urgency in 2015, 2016, 2017, and the run-up to what catalyzed the portals, the launch of portals, as we described earlier, and then it led to the Universalis project. Now, some of what I described now, we've covered in perhaps the first ever Universalis conversation, but we've now done it in a different way. So that is that experimentation. And I still want now to, with that context of giving a bit of a flavor of the witnessing experience, and I don't know whether it comes through in the descriptive language, because the actual process is one where I would be with sometime walking or sitting or lying on my back with closed eyes, and I would be in dialogue witnessing that person. So that person age 16, that person age 21, that person age 42, that person age 54. And there is a way of speaking to that person as though they are alive now. So rather than that person, the person of 16, the person of 21, the person of 42, telling the story from their eyes, there is a way of telling the story from the eyes of the witnessing presence, of the watching that energetic blueprint and its template interpreted and seen from today's eyes, which frees up that experience into a new updated context in today, in which there is a release of all that was locked in time. Well, I don't know if all, but a lot, because every time the trace is traveled, there is more that is being released. So the creative, unintegrated part that was left behind, frozen in time, is given a chance to be integrated and released into the permission of today. So one can be into the 60s, but actually experience the cascading fountain of a youthful part, or the 30s or 40s, gushing back to reintegrate inside the currency of that moment, which is very different from going back in one's memory, down memory lane, reliving the experience. No, it's not that. People like to tell about what happened when such and such. And those circumstances, they go back to the experience in the way they experienced it back then. That's not the object of this experience, because in that way, a person retells the subjective experience. What I attempted to offer access to is a way in which a person is able to observe the experience without and experience these experiences as an object outside of oneself, integrated and allowed to flow into oneself inside the context of today through the permission that's opening now. So I'm going to pause here, give you a chance to see if you want to say something. I do want to bring still inside this episode that we are recording now, and then I possibly will bring a slide. Haven't looked at the slide since this morning, but I'd like to bring a slide of the sevenfold facets that are primary in the study of the stop situations, human predicaments, and the various stop situations. But let me pause here, give you a chance to bring your voice into this, please.
Well, thank you for sharing this extraordinary story of your life and the journey from your youth to the now. And something in the process feels like a quickening of some kind, a kind of gathering and a quickening of the impulses, the essences, the motives, the driving forces that were there. And I don't want to be assumptive, but like it feels like a fusion of soul and spirit dynamics, which is very, very rare. And I'm looking forward to listen to more, but I'm experiencing it also as a live demonstration of, as you said, of how to update through this technique that you're saying of watching your life as an object and conversing with the different facets of yourself, of the self, from where you are now. I find it fascinating as a proposition, as a practice, and also in really discovering maybe what your life is about. So thank you. It's very, very evocative.
Well, thank you, Kyriaki. Let's not pretend that I've arrived to any final destination of any kind. It's what we are trying to propose here is that it's natural for a human to be engaged with the updating of the journey. Now, in this case, the catalyzing inquiry was actually about the Universalis project. And where are we? And I realized that I needed to do the personal, impersonal updating to be able to trace what catalyzed this inquiry for me, which I will complete by bringing what we are about to enter next. What I don't want to try, what I don't want this to be is to be in any way a suggestion or an impression that the journey is over. It's just a signpost, a marker in time, and I don't consider myself in any way having reached any final kind of enlightenment of any kind. It became very popular in Eastern practices, in Eastern traditions, to seek enlightenment. And when we go through the stop situations, and one of them will be to do with religions, I will highlight that itself was actually part of the stop situation of religion, when there is a declaration of something that has reached a certain arrival point. So I want to be very clear that I'm not declaring having arrived anywhere, but this is more the discovery along the journey. So I know you're not implying, but you gave me an opportunity to state this for the record. So thank you. Please, Karen.
Yeah, I don't know if this is valid, so I'm putting it in brackets. But it's in terms of the looking at your story objectively. And as you were talking through some of the different stages, I was thinking about the epoch unfolding. And we can look at yellow and we can talk in general terms. But what about the individuals? What about the pain points and the struggles of the epoch progression? And it was almost like, as you were talking, I was seeing, I don't know how, it's not micro, macro, it's not the right, I can't quite find the terminology, but it's as if the expression of your story through these different images and times was a living spectrum progression through your life, but echoed through history. And when you spoke about the point where you reached the awareness of fragmentation, I thought, well, that's the point of the indigo, because you're trying to access a merging and an integration. And that was when it sort of dropped in that this is an adjacent but an integrated way of accessing the, as you say, it's not a personal access for us to go back and look at it, but it's the personal in terms of these people from the ancient Egyptians through the Renaissance were real people. They were humans who we have spoken about how and Kyriaki in one recording beautifully talks about the Marcus Aurelius and the Roman Empire within. So it's just a beautiful, evocative unfolding of these layers and levels of accessing a non-linear truth of this moment.
Well, so yes and yes, because we've described the pattern, the sevenfold fractal, as a natural process that occurs every day and every week, of course, 7 days, and through the months and through the year and through a person's life and through the life of a nation, and therefore also through the longer period of time, such as the epochal story. So we grounded in several of our conversations the sevenfold epochal story to establish the blueprint of it. And also on an earlier episode described how those 7 patterns will appear even when a person chooses to build a business or determine that they are embarking on a spiritual journey. So I think, Karen, you'd be quite right and astute in observing those patterns there. And yeah, I mean, it's easy to then take it and go deeper with it and recognize it. Before the indigo was the blue phase, where there was a need to build a systemic way of dramatically accelerating business results. That was one of the aspects of the blue, and how to actually do this. And I've described on a different occasion that part of coping with the pain of accelerating the consulting practice was involved a certain imagery practice, where at any point where I found myself facing either tremendous struggle, or I didn't know how I could confront a certain challenge, or I just simply was scared, including scared to create a proposal with a fee structure that I thought I wanted to include in that proposal, and needed to find the chutzpah and the confidence to do so, and the image that I developed to facilitate that was that I imagined myself in a blue overall, and the blue overall, wearing the blue overall, had a self-directive message, which said, Just take care of business. With another word before that, just take care of business. God damn it, just take care of business. It was how I talk to myself and how I talk to my soul about confronting in a practical way anything that seemed as impossible obstacle. And time and again, I broke through personal impossibilities of what a day earlier or a week earlier or a month earlier was a personal blockage or a personal stop situation. So I found a way to, now I can apply here the same third person practice. I can witness this person and I can witness how something is crystallized in him, even in the configuration in his spine, and how he is integrating something that was more ideas, intentions, desires, aspirations, how he is wearing the armory of that, how he becomes the embodiment of that in the fuller actuality. That's the journey of the first decade of the 21st century, and that leads to the point that you described, where there was okay, so that was attained and that was attained here, but how can these be merged? And for all intents and purposes, this conversation today is another point of something merging, because there was never an access point until today to actually describe it on something that will be shared in public. So that makes me wonder about what is it about Helsinki and the Nordic configuration, the Finnish, the Finland, the unique nature of Finland, the unique nature of the Nordic lands, their sturdiness, their resilience, there is a word in the Finnish language that I've learned before I came here, which is sisu, which is more than resilience. It's a combination of resilience and grit and courage and determination and sticking to itness, all of it together. So, and these are people that carry with humility unwavering determination. So I feel like I've come here to do work. I'll say it this way. I feel that simply by being here, there is teaching, there is transference that the Nordic people are affording me. And I'm here to integrate it. This is an editorial choice on the move. We're going to make the last part of Universalis 25 a separate standalone, Universalis 26, as an add-on. And you'll have to come back and catch the completion of that story in the next episode. So what we traced here was the practice of witnessing yourself and your searing moments where you're able to capture the energetic diagram, the soul configuration that was fashioned in those searing moments. And you're able to look at that person and the template of that experience, the tableau of that experience, as an object. Learn from it, and also release and liberate it. Thank you for enabling and facilitating this journey. We will see you shortly on the next episode.
Along with our website at portalsofperception.org, Portals is also available on YouTube and on all podcast platforms, as well as social media. You can become an active member and join the conversation in community events. And you can help us get the word out by liking this content and by sharing it with your friends.